Hi everybody, good evening and welcome to our webinar this evening. Apologies for the slight delay getting started. We had a small technical difficulty, but we seem to have it resolved now. And so welcome to today's webinar, which is Grow Your Own Green Oil Field. We conduct these webinars every Thursday at about this time, so 1 p.m. Eastern Time, and you can always go to the front page of our website, www.costaricainvest.ie, and there you can find when we've got our next webinars scheduled. Alternatively, if you miss a webinar, you can always look in the free downloads and media area of our website, and there you can see recordings of our previous webinar. It's in that area there where I'm pointing at the screen at the moment. So those are our contact details there. Now, for those of you attending a webinar for the first time, you'll see there's a little control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. And in that area, there is an area there that you can type in questions to ask during the course of the webinar. Now, we will have some time at the end of the webinar for a few questions, we hope, and I'll get to as many of those as I possibly can. So I won't be handling any questions during the webinar, but I'll get to as many as I can during the webinar. So if anything at all pops into your mind during the course of the webinar, please feel free to just type in those questions there and we'll get to them at the end of the webinar. So today we're going to tell you about a secret that the Texan oil men already know, and that is that an oil field is a great investment and it provides regular income and increasing prices. But we're also going to tell you a little more about an opportunity that you probably don't know so much about it, and that's that a green oil field is an even better investment. It's a one-of-a-kind opportunity, and we have a new project recently started in the southern zone of Costa Rica that really is a very attractive investment opportunity. Now, so what are we going to cover today in the webinar? Well, we're going to talk a little bit about Costa Rica, of course, because that's where the oil field, our green oil field, is located. We're going to talk a little bit about real estate in Costa Rica, about real estate purchase and real estate ownership. We're going to talk, of course, about biofuels in some considerable detail. We're going to mention our limited launch offer, and there is a bonus available for those of you on the webinar today who decide to go ahead and invest. First of all, a little bit about me. My name is James Cahill. I'm an expert at investments in Costa Rica. We've been involved in ecological hybrid investment and development opportunities for the past 4 years. The companies that we choose to work with all have a very high level of success, and we're sticklers for details. We always do a very thorough due diligence before we agree to work with or represent any company. The criteria by which we choose projects to deal and work with are that they involve development land, which we combine with agricultural commodities. They must be green and eco-friendly, sustainable, and we only work with high-quality, reputable companies with a strong track record who we enjoy working with. We particularly like opportunities which give a smaller investor a chance to get involved. Most investments in biofuels are really only open to the very largest investors. However, this particular investment opportunity that we're going to talk about today is open to smaller investors, what we term micro-investors, and micro-investors in the biofuels industry would be somebody with about $350,000 or less to invest. But our entry level in this is $35,000. Now, the particular investment that we're dealing with today is a real investment. I think a lot of us have discovered to our cost that many of the traditional investment opportunities that we invested in have proved very lacking, and indeed some of those people that we put our trust in have proved similarly lacking. I know I've certainly discovered this to my cost. Our head office is located in Ireland, and as you're all probably aware, Ireland's banking crisis has effectively demolished the economy here. So those bank shares that I invested in don't look very attractive right now. The bottom line is that an investment advisor doesn't care as much about your money as you do, or is as engaged in making it grow. But if you had access to an asset class, the first of which doubles in value every 10 years, the second part of that asset class, which is something that Goldman Sachs says is akin to turning the clock back to the 1990s and investing in the PC revolution. The third part of the investment has historically seen average per annum returns of 20% per annum, and together we've got a conservative per annum return of 38.2% or a 382% return of investment over 10 years. Even better, these are real assets. They're not pieces of paper, and they're in your name. So if you're able to take charge of your future and invest in these real assets, would it be of interest? Well, what are we talking about here? Well, we're talking about our renewable energy farms opportunity. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about Costa Rica. So, where is it? Well, Costa Rica is in Central America. It's the oldest democracy in Central and Southern America. It has more teachers than policemen and a literacy rate of over 96%. This year, they're going to spend more than 25% of their entire national budget on education. And it has a fantastic climate. People in Costa Rica live longer than most other places in the Western Hemisphere and live to an average age of 79 years. Costa Rica contains over 5% of the world's biodiversity, and it's the country that practically invented ecotourism, and it ranks really highly in a number of polls. They're ranked third in the world of environmental performance at the moment, and 3 years ago they were ranked fifth in the world in terms of environmental performance. They plan to be number one, and a study from Yale University is due out this year, and so we're all anxiously awaiting to see where Costa Rica ranks. Costa Rica is ranked number one in the world in the Happy Planet Index, and this compares the ecological footprint of a nation to its happiness. So the bottom line is that people in Costa Rica are very happy and do very little damage to the environment. Costa Rica is the seventh most politically and socially stable country in the world, and that's according to the Economist Intelligence Unit, and that's a fact that often shocks people. When you say that the seventh most politically and socially stable country in the world is located in Costa Rica, most people simply don't believe it, but it is, and that little country in Central America is Costa Rica. Costa Rica is the most prosperous country in Latin America, and that study is carried out every year by the Legatum Prosperity Index. Now, Costa Rica has preserved more than 25% of its surface area as natural park and forest reserve never to be developed, and it plans to be carbon neutral as a nation by 2021. More than 95% of their energy requirements come from renewable resources. And it's an amazing story how they did this. They made a decision 20 years ago that they would take a long-term view as to their energy requirements. As a result of that, they invested hugely in hydroelectric, wind and geothermal power, technologies that at the time were very expensive. People thought they were mad. Oil prices were low, and these technologies were hugely expensive by comparison. But invest they did, and now many countries look to Costa Rica and those inspired decisions that they made over 20 years ago. So Costa Rica is a small country, but it's got very big goals. They plan to be carbon neutral as a nation by 2021. And they have a number of channels by which they're going to achieve this, but one of which is the planting of trees. And last year, they planted more than 7 million trees. That's more per head of population than anywhere else in the world. To achieve their carbon neutrality, they're going to have to plant more trees and preserve more land, and that's going to add to the value of existing development land. Now, Costa Rica is a very attractive tourist destination, and the tourism industry is worth over $2 billion per year to Costa Rica, and they intend to grow that further, and particularly to focus on ecotourism. At the beginning of this year, or at the beginning of last year, tourist numbers were up very significantly, and in total, tourist numbers increased by 10.5% last year when compared to 2009. But Costa Rica is not interested in just the one-off tourist. They want people to come again and again and preferably own a home in Costa Rica. And to support this, they've made the process of emigrating to Costa Rica very straightforward. And you and I have exactly the same land and property ownership rights as a Costa Rican citizen, and that's enshrined in the Constitution. More than 1% of the population is already North American expatriates and retirees. And why are they looking to Costa Rica? Well, they're looking for a lower cost of living, safety, security, great healthcare, and a fantastic climate. The cost of living in Costa Rica is about 50% of the cost of living in the USA, and healthcare is a fraction of the price. So you can imagine it's very attractive, living in a beautiful climate in a safe place with great healthcare for a fraction of your current cost of living. But Costa Rica is not just a pretty place to sit on the beach. It's also looking elsewhere to generate revenue, and it's looking to high-tech industry. A combination of lucrative tax breaks, a highly educated workforce, and low labor costs has successfully attracted many multinationals. So Costa Rica is very business friendly. It's got huge eco aspirations. It's stable, it's safe, and it's got excellent healthcare. Let's look a little bit at the economy of Costa Rica. Now, at the beginning of 2009, the IMF issued a very positive report I beg your pardon, at the beginning of 2010. And the IMF issued a very positive report on the state of the economy in Costa Rica. They indicated that economic growth had risen in the second half of 2009 and remained strong in the first quarter of 2010. They said that economic recovery in Costa Rica was firmly underway. And were they correct? Well, absolutely they were correct. Exports were up significantly during the course of the year, and in fact the economy in total grew by 4.5% in 2010 and is expected to grow by 5% in 2011. Now, let's talk a little bit about land in Costa Rica, real estate in Costa Rica. Costa Rican land prices had seen some spectacular increases over the last number of years. And in some areas, albeit from a very low level, land prices had increased by not hundreds but thousands of %. However, there are two very big drivers that are going to drive land prices in the short to medium term in Costa Rica. The first of which is the baby boomer retirees. There are over 100 million baby boomers in North America, and they're going to retire over the next decade. Now, some estimates suggest that up to 20% will seek to retire abroad. And when they look to retire abroad, they're going to be looking for safety, good climate, quality healthcare, and a lower cost of living. Now, Costa Rica ticks all of these boxes. But Costa Rica couldn't possibly take 20 million North American retirees. It only has a population of 4 million. But a significant percentage will look to Costa Rica and will look to live the Costa Rican dream. And these baby boomer retirees as a demographic are armed with more money than any demographic group at any time in history. So they're going to seek out their retirement home and in Costa Rica to live that dream lifestyle in Costa Rica. The second big driver for land price growth is Costa Rica's eco-plans. You remember I mentioned earlier that they plan to be carbon neutral as a nation by 2021. And over 25% of the surface area is already zoned as natural park and forest reserve, never to be developed. And the aspiration to be carbon neutral means that they need to plant more trees. The planting of more trees is going to reduce the amount of development land available and push prices upwards. And this process has already started. If you Google recent news about Costa Rica, you'll see at the beginning of this year they secured funding to increase the preserved area from 25% to 26% of its national territory. So there's going to be less and less land to develop, and there's going to be more and more people wanting that land. And the people who want it are going to be armed with more money than any demographic group at any time in history. So Costa Rica represents a great opportunity for land investment generally. Of course, when it comes to land investment, there are three things to consider: location, location, location. And we're going to consider those three aspects in due course. But what if we combined land investment in a great location in Costa Rica with a very valuable commodity, one that's increasing in price daily, and which the International Energy Agency's World Energy Assessment estimates that supply needs to increase by over 400% over the next 20 years? Well, we're going to talk a little bit about that, and we're going to talk a little bit about the renewable energy farm in the southern zone in Costa Rica. Now, the renewable energy farm in the southern zone in Costa Rica is run and developed by United Biofuels of America. And United Biofuels of America has recently been named by Shell Oil as one of the top 25 global energy entrepreneurs in the world. And so we're going to talk a little bit today about our renewable energy farm opportunity. We're going to talk about investing in the future and how various factors make this a very smart, ethical, and profitable investment. We're going to give you a little bit of information on UBA's background in this new industry. And we're going to talk, of course, about biofuels, what it is, how it works, and why biofuels are a great investment in the energy sector. We're also going to talk about income land ownership in what we call a hotspot in Costa Rica, and what a hotspot actually is, and how we combine these hotspots with biofuels to provide a very, very strong investment opportunity. Now, the name of the program is Renewable Energy Farms. And let me give you a little bit of background on UBA, the owners and promoters of this renewable energy farm opportunity. United Biofuels of America is the first biofuel consultancy and development organization in Costa Rica. And they've been working in outreach and planning with different government bodies throughout Central America, not just in Costa Rica, although they're based in Costa Rica. They have been primarily focused, apart from the last year and a half, on working on the commercialization and deployment more for the macro or large investor. They have more than 4.5 years of R&D or research and development experience, and most of that has been involved in best practices on agronomics. Some of their awards and partners and consortiums that they work with are included on here. And you can see they work very closely with Earth University. In fact, most of their agronomists are either lecturers in or graduates of Earth University. Of course, I mentioned already that Shell have named them one of the top 25 global energy entrepreneurs. Costa Rica Invest, of course, that's us, and they work very closely with us. Recope is the mandated agency to buy all biofuels in Costa Rica, and United Biofuels of America are a partner of Recope. You'll see lots of coverage of United Biofuels of America and the renewable energy farms in various news channels around the world, but particularly look at the Costa Rican news. Of course, they work closely with a development organization called Day Group. They work very closely with the International Energy Advisors and many, many, many other partners. One of the big events that they run, UBA run, is the Jatropha Harvest Experience, and they put this on every year. Now, they have one that's actually been scheduled for the end of this year in Colombia, and it's an absolutely unique event that's going to bring together various people from all sorts of biofuel sectors. They don't just have a conference day, but they actually bring people onto a biofuel plantation and walk them through the entire Jatropha process. This is a 3-day event where they have meet and greet parties, full conference day, full day on the farm, and all sorts of smaller events going on. As I mentioned, this year it's going to be at the end of the year in Colombia. It's a beautiful area and a beautiful resort, and they're going to be working with partners down there that are currently developing over 30,000 hectares of biofuel plantation. This Jatropha Harvest Experience brings together investors, developers, landowners, technologists, researchers, governmental and educational organizations to promote what UBA called the Million Gallon Challenge. The Million Gallon Challenge came about a number of years ago. UBA were approached by the United States Department of Defense contractors, and they were developing a technology to convert Jatropha biofuels into JP8 or jet fuel. And the requirements were 1 million gallons a day. And so UBA began a very intensive research program to be able to supply them with that 1 million gallon requirement. Out of that, they came up with the 1 million gallon challenge. And they've been promoting this through their harvest experience. United Biofuels of America have already 80,000 hectares pledged in, and they've developed strategic partnerships with micro-investors, macro-investors, renewable energy farms, and so many more. When they were developing this program, they realized that they couldn't just rely on macro investment alone. They realized that there were a number of micro investors interested in investing, and if they could put together a program that was suitable for micro investors, they could help to reach that 1 million gallon challenge. This all came about because UBA identified that there was an extreme supply-demand gap. UBA are getting daily requests for 20 metric tons, 30 metric tons, 40 metric tons of oil per month from various refineries and organizations all around the world. And simply, UBA were unable to supply them. They simply don't have enough plants in the ground. Supply and demand is continuing to grow because this is a mandated product. And so more and more people have to involve themselves in biofuels and supplement their fuel systems with biofuels, and there are just simply not enough plants in the ground to fill that requirement. Many macro investors are now guaranteeing their own supply by planting their own plantations because that's the cheapest way for them to fulfill their supply requirements. Otherwise, they remain in the bid market, working with middlemen and paying higher prices. Anytime that you have a supply and demand gap that's so extreme with a mandated product, means that you've got a very attractive opportunity. And the solution is simple. They need more plants in the ground, as many oil-bearing plants as possible. So UBA, as I mentioned, need to combine micro and macro investors and look at different ways for commercial developments and cooperations to fulfill the demand gap, the demand that's there for biofuels at the moment. So they came up with the renewable energy farms. And this fulfills all these criteria. Now, what we're looking at here is a typical Jatropha plantation. We're going to talk a little bit more about Jatropha in a few minutes. This is an agrarian parcel or agricultural development, and Jatropha is a plant that grows very well in the tropics. The plantation itself, the renewable energy farm, is broken up into parcels, and these parcels include the land, the roads, and the electricity and infrastructure. These are the investment highlights of the renewable energy farms that we're going to be talking about. So there's a low entry level of investment for 35,000 for the micro investors. As I mentioned, UBA would classify a micro investor as somebody with 350,000 or less to invest. Typically, as I mentioned previously, UBA had been working with very large commercial deployments, large-scale deployments. But they were getting so many calls from micro investors saying that they wanted to get involved, and the macro investors, these are very large projects that take a long time to get off the ground. They recognized that there was an opportunity there where everybody could win, where UBA could help to fulfill their requirement for the 1 million gallons, where micro-investors could get involved and have a very profitable investment, and where everybody could be a winner. As I mentioned, renewable energy farms is a low break-in investment with a minimum investment of 35,000. And that 35,000 includes 5,000 square meters or 1.23 acres of titled property in Costa Rica. This is a fully managed investment, and you will have about 800 income-producing trees growing on your land. The biofuel income over the investment term is almost $50,000. So this is the return that you'll get from the biofuels alone on your land. But the property valuation is already going to rise. And we're going to look at some of the factors that are going to cause that property valuation to rise in due course. Essentially, these parcels are producing an on average combination return of 38% per annum on investment. So these are green oil fields producing high quality, already approved and proven vegetable oils. Now UBA intercrop two main biofuel plants. One is Jatropha, and that's one that you'll see lots of information about on the internet, and the other is Maca palm. Maca palm you'll find out very little of information on the internet about, because this is effectively almost a proprietary technology of United Biofuels of America. Now these are proven feedstocks, and UBA only grow proven feedstocks, but they're high yielding and very profitable. Jatropha, for example, has been selected by the US Department of Defense as the #1 drop-in replacement for fuel. And since then, there's been a number of aviation companies that have been flying with biofuels. Virgin Airlines, Air New Zealand, just to name two. But in fact, as a matter of fact, flights flying into Europe for next year and not using a biofuel blend are going to receive an extra taxation. So again, this is a mandated market. These airlines are having to fly with biofuels. Interestingly enough, Lufthansa is the first airline in the world to announce that they will be flying with a biofuel blend in their local flights. So even though they're based in Europe and they're only flying locally in Europe, they have a 10% biofuel blend already mixed into their fuel. Jatropha, the Jatropha plant, begins producing in the first year. And doing nothing at all to the plantation, it can produce up to 1,200 gallons per hectare and has over 40% oil content. More importantly, in regard to Jatropha, it's not a food crop, so it doesn't compete as a food crop, as, for example, corn does in ethanol production. Jatropha outperforms other feedstocks on return on investment and net energy. Maca is a very interesting palm. It produces multiple types of oil, all in high demand. It's actually very easy to grow, and it's native to Costa Rica. It can produce up to 4,200 gallons per hectare and has a very high oil content of over 60%. As I mentioned, you will find out very little detail about Maca on the internet, but UBA have proven plantations already producing very high yields from this Jatropha and Maca intercropped model. Here's a little picture of Rudolf Diesel. And Rudolf Diesel in 1893 developed the first diesel engine. But he didn't develop it for petrochemicals. In fact, he developed it to be used with diesel oil. And in 1920, Rudolf Diesel said that the use of vegetable oils for engine fuels may seem insignificant today, but such oils may become in the course of time as important as petroleum and coal tar products at the present time. That's what Rudolf Diesel said all the way back in 1920, and he was right. We've gone full circle, and now more and more countries and agencies and companies and people are looking to biofuels to replace our diminishing petrochemical oil supply. And there are a number of reasons for that. Fossil fuel and biofuel prices will continue to rise dramatically over the coming decade. Many analysts predict very large increases. In fact, when I looked this morning, petrochemical oil prices are over $100 a barrel. And these prices are going to continue to rise, as I mentioned, because we've already reached peak oil. Peak oil is reached when the supply of petrochemical oil goes into terminal decline. Most experts say that we've already reached peak oil. And so we're now declining to nothing. And in due course, we are going to run out of petrochemical oil. It costs us more every year, every month, every day to drill for the oil, to transport it, and to refine it. Developing countries like China and India have now overtaken the US in terms of energy consumption. Goldman Sachs is predicting for this year oil prices of over $100 a barrel. Well, gosh, no great prediction there because we're already over $100 a barrel. But they're producing an oil price, petrochemical oil price of over $350 a barrel over the next decade. But why are biofuel prices going to rise? Well, again, it's back to the fact that it's a mandated product. Over 120 countries in the world have already mandated biofuel purchases and development. We have an aviation industry, like those planes flying into Europe, that are mandated in the development and use of biofuels because planes that fly into Europe from next year are being taxed extra if they don't have a biofuel blend. Now, the aviation industry consumes over 60 billion gallons of fuel per annum. And it's the same not only in airlines, but in the transportation industry. They've also been mandated. We also have protocols like the Kyoto Protocol, which has been taken taken by the Copenhagen and Cancun Protocol, which are further driving standards to be developed for biofuels. I did mention very briefly earlier that Costa Rica itself has a national biofuel program. They plan to be carbon neutral by 2021. They have a 10% blend requirement by 2012. Earlier this year, they privatized the purchase of biofuels, and they used a company called Recope. That essentially means that they've been ordered by the government to buy every gallon of biofuel in Costa Rica in order to meet that 10% blend requirement. So, UBI identified that there were lots of micro-investors looking to invest in biofuels, that there was a big supply-demand gap. And so they went to their advisory board and they explained this. And they explained that they needed to come up with something that could cater for the micro-investors, allowing them to invest and help them to meet the demand that was there for biofuels. So they tried to develop something that was sustainable, had a low entry point, that had the security of title-held real estate. There are lots of other opportunities for biofuel investment out there, but quite often what you're simply doing is putting dollars into a fund. You have no title ownership of anything. And unfortunately, this is the elephant in the room with many other low entry point biofuel investments. What you end up doing is you buy some plants, but somebody else owns the land. Now, by definition, biofuel investments are long-term investments. And if something goes wrong with that, the company who is promoting the investment, well, ultimately you may end up owning plants on land you don't own, and that's never a good situation. Even in the best possible scenario, all you get is the biofuel return, and in due course, the land, which has increased significantly in value, reverts back to the owner, and you get none of that capital appreciation. So taking all this into mind, what did UBA come up with? Well, they came up with the renewable energy farms. And they identified a number of hotspots throughout Costa Rica. A hotspot is a piece of property, land or area that's going to see rapid proven development growth over the next 5 to 10 years. And it also has to be ideal for growing biofuels. As I mentioned, they've identified a number of these hotspots. And the one that we're going to particularly talking about today is the renewable energy farm in the southern zone in Costa Rica. This is located in Buenos Aires canton or county, and the entire southern zone is an area that really hasn't seen the development of the rest of Costa Rica. So it's considered to be an area that's going to see significant growth going forward. If we look at some of the factors about the southern zone, it is very interesting in terms of land value. First of all, Costa Rica's third international airport has just been approved for Palma Sur, which is about 40 to 45 minutes away from the renewable energy farm. Now, we know what happens when a new international airport opens. Previously, there was only one international airport in San Jose, and that became overloaded. So they developed another one in the northern region in a place called Liberia. As soon as the development for the airport began, land prices began to rise significantly. And why? Because the area was simply more accessible. They effectively quadrupled within 2 years of that airport opening. Now, land prices in the southern zone may not quadruple, and we're not predicting that they'll quadruple as a result of the opening of this new airport. But what we are saying is that they are going to rise strongly. And remember, this new international airport is only the third one in Costa Rica. And the farm is only 40 to 45 minutes drive away. Another important point is that the second largest infrastructure program in the whole of Central and Southern America is going to be taking place in a valley in the southern zone. It's a gigantic hydroelectric dam that's going to feed both Costa Rica and Panama and Nicaragua with electricity. The largest ever infrastructure program and capital expenditure in Central and Southern America was the expansion of the Panama Canal, and this is the second largest. With the development of this hydroelectric dam, there has to be significant infrastructure improvement in this area. So they're improving the roads and the access. And improved roads and access means that more tourists are going to come down and the demand for land is going to increase. In addition, this is a very beautiful area. It's actually one of the best agricultural areas in Costa Rica. And Jatropha and Macauba farms are achieving very high yields in this area, and these farms are managed by United Biofuels of America. This area is only about an hour from Gulf Fidel and the Panama border, and this is a very large free zone and a very beautiful area called the Osa Peninsula. The Osa Peninsula, of course, hosts the Corcovado Park, which is the largest biological reserve in Central America, and it's less than an hour's drive away from some of the best beaches in Central America, some of which rate in the top 10 in the world. It's a very beautiful area. Here you can see just a very quick overview of the lots on this renewable energy farm in the southern zone. So, what type of investment are we looking at here? Well, we're looking at biofuel producing Jatropha and Macauba palm. We're going to get annual revenue from the biofuel. We're going to get land appreciation and growth from the land. The tenure, well, of course, you own the land. Now, all of our projections are based on you selling the land on in 10 years, but you don't have to sell the land on. You can the Jatropha will continue to produce biofuel for 25 years, and the Macauba will continue to produce for 25 years, and the Jatropha will continue to produce for 50 years. So you don't have to sell the land on after 10 years. In fact, you could build on the land yourself. Your protection is exactly that. You own the land. Property size is 5,000 square meters, which is about 1.23 acres, and the entry-level investment is 35,000. Well, let's have a look at how much revenue you can expect. Initially, once the Jatropha and Macauba are planted, revenue is low. The Jatropha will produce in year 1, and from year 1 onwards, the Macauba will not produce anything until year 5. So you've got steadily increasing yields to year 4, and that's coming entirely from the Jatropha. And then in year 5, the Makuuba kicks in and effectively doubles the yield from there on out. So the Jatropha will produce about $350, $1,400, $2,625, $3,500, and then in year 5, the Jatropha will produce about $3,500, and the Makuuba will produce a further $3,500, giving you $7,000 in total, and it will continue to produce from there on. If we add that all together over a 10-year period, you've got nearly $50,000 in returns from the biofuel alone. Now, let's have a look at the property valuation. How does that look by comparison? Now, we do know that when you put infrastructure into land in Costa Rica, that effectively the price doubles. And if you look at similar lots without biofuels in this area of a similar size, so 5,000 square meter lot with roads, electricity, and water, they would be selling for somewhere between $70,000 and $120,000. That'd be the typical pricing. Now, so these lots are currently, the investment is $35,000. Once the roads and infrastructure are in, we comfortably feel that they are worth $70,000. In fact, other lots in the area, as I mentioned, are going for up to $120,000 of this size. So $70,000 we're very comfortable with. Now, we're assuming that land prices will increase by 7.5% per annum, in line with just the improved roads and infrastructure in this area over the next 5 years. In about 5 years, we're expecting that new international airport to have kicked in, and we're assuming an increase of 10% per year for the next 5 years. Add that together, and the land becomes worth $154,000 over that 10-year period. A very important part when it comes to the biofuel returns is that we're using today's prices for biofuels, and we have not factored in any increase in biofuel prices at all. If biofuel prices go up by even 50 cents a gallon, you're going to see a significant return. A 5% per annum increase in biofuel prices will push this return from $49,875 to over $66,000. And that's from the biofuel alone. So let's move on. Many micro-investors previously investing in Costa Rica were interested in investing in condos. A lot of people were coming to Central America, and specifically Costa Rica, looking at a condo investment because they were looking for an income-producing property that was also going to give them some capital increase or capital appreciation as well, perhaps until they were ready to retire themselves and use the condo in 10 or 15 years. So what we've done here is we've put together a slide which compares ownership of a number of biofuel lots compared to the ownership of a condo. Okay, let's look how this compares. So for $175,000 in the renewable energy farm in Costa Rica, you could buy 5 lots. Now, the land value, assuming the same increases that we highlighted in the previous slide, would be worth $770,000 in 10 years. And the income from the lot in terms of biofuel returns is $245,000. So your investment of $175,000, the land value, total income added all together comes to over $1 million, slightly over $1 million. Let's compare by comparison an investment in a condo. Now, typical condos in this area, about $220,000. What's it going to be worth in 10 years? Well, we're assuming that it's going to double in value over 10 years. And that would sort of be typical. But of course, there are many factors that will affect whether it doubles or does not double. If other condos appear in the area, then demand for your condo may go down. Your price may not increase that strongly. If less condos appear, perhaps it might be a little more stronger than that. But let's assume it more than doubles and gets to 500,000. Total income is an interesting one because it's actually quite hard to make income from a condo. Remember, you're having to pay somebody to advertise it. You're having to pay somebody to maintain it. You're having to carry out any repairs that need to be carried out. So Again, we've asked some experts in the area, and they said, well, if you achieved 50,000 in actual real income in your pocket over that 10-year period, you'd actually be doing quite well. So, add it all together, total value 550,000. So, significantly less return over a 10-year period. And remember, owning the land is so much more flexible. You can liquidate a lot whenever you need it. Alternatively, you could build a home yourself on one of the lots. You could liquidate a couple of the lots and use the returns from that to finance the build of your home. Remember, for this investment of 175,000, which is less than the cost of purchasing a condo, you would have 5 title properties, income-producing properties in Costa Rica. With the condo, all you own is the condo. And in 10 years, you've got a 10-year-older condo and all the maintenance that goes with that. So, which is the more attractive? Well, of course, for me, it's the renewable energy farm. One of the points that I mentioned there was flexibility. And this is very important in any investment. This was one of the parameters that UBA looked at when they went to their board to come up with the renewable energy farm program. They were looking for security, and the investment had to pay for itself over 10 years and have the security of that title property and needed to be very flexible. The renewable energy farm opportunity gives the investor as much flexibility as possible in terms of what they want to do. If they want to build themselves, they can. If they want to sell on the properties, they can. And of course, you can opt out of the biofuel program at any time. This is an opt-in program. You could, of course, opt to build a house yourself and effectively run your house off the grid. You can build a house at any time. Remember, you've got 5,000 square meters or 1.23 acres of your own property. So you could cut a small piece in, build on it, and live in this beautiful plantation that looks like a tropical orchard. And even better, that tropical orchard is producing you a significant income all the time. So, how do you proceed from here? Well, it's very straightforward. You reserve your parcel in the renewable energy farm. You receive, fill out, and return your investment package forms. Then you receive your Green Oilfield National Biofuel Certificate and your National Registry Certificate, and you begin earning income as your land appreciates. So let's summarize the renewable energy farm. Let's look at some of the highlights here. It's a low-breaking investment of just $35,000. For that, you receive 5,000 square meters or 1.23 acres of title property. And it's secure property in an area that's going to see significant growth. It's a fully managed plantation of over 800 trees, and each of those trees is producing income for you. Over that 10-year period, at today's prices, that's going to yield you about $49,000, almost $50,000. And of course, if prices increase, if biofuel prices increase, it's going to yield you even more. A simple 5% per annum increase will yield you $66,000 over that 10-year period. And remember, you've got the significant increase in property valuation. And this is located in one of Costa Rica's hotspots, the southern zone, an area absolutely open for property price increase and development. How much of the biofuel return do you get? Well, you get 100% less the management fee, and the management fee for managing your biofuels is 10% of the yield. So UBA, United Biofuels of America, are as engaged at getting you your return as you are. Because, of course, the bigger the return you get, the more that 10% is worth to them. The figures that we mentioned earlier on are all net of that 10% management fee. This is a very flexible opportunity. It combines a number of growth markets in one investment. And remember, your biofuel sales are guaranteed. It's a mandated market. In Costa Rica, Recope have a mandate to buy every gallon of biofuel. So you've got a smart, ethical, very profitable investment. So these are just some slides of this very beautiful area in Costa Rica. These are some of the animals that you can see in the southern zone. That's a baby sloth. He's actually in a box. There aren't boxes like that in Costa Rica. And here are some happy retirees in the southern zone. Okay, now I did mention at the beginning of the webinar that there was a bonus for people listening in on this webinar today, and UBA, United Biofuels of America, For anybody who attends this webinar and ultimately decides to invest in the renewable energy farm, they will receive, number one, their land will be delivered to them in a Costa Rican SA or limited company. Now, there are tax and logistical advantages to owning land and holding it in a Costa Rican limited company, and they will establish and set up that limited company for you. Typical charges for setting up a limited company in Costa Rica run from between $500 to $1,000 US. So that is a valuable addition for you. Secondly, you can get a ticket, or UBA will give you a free ticket to the next Jatropha conference, Jatropha Harvest Experience, the next one of your choice, and those tickets are worth $1,500 each. So how do you get involved? Well, it's very straightforward, very simple. Just the first step is to contact us. Send us an email to info@costaricainvest.ie. Send us your name, your phone number, and the number of lots that you may be interested in. We'll then get a sales consultant closest to you to give you a call and have a chat and really get an understanding of what your needs and requirements are. They can then supply you with the information that you need to make a decision if the renewable energy farm opportunity is for you and suits your investment needs. For somebody who's looking for security, a great return, and lots of flexibility, it's the ideal opportunity. So at this point in time, I did mention that we would get on and answer any questions that people may have. And I do see some questions are in already. Gosh, quite a number of questions here. Let me just have a look at these and see. Okay, we have a question in here. What are your calculation variables? 50,000 sounds very high for 10 years on just 1.3 acres of land. And that is a very, very valid point. And it is high. There are a number of factors that need to be considered. Now, first of all, many of you are probably right now furiously Googling and having a look at information on the internet. First of all, this is a very fast-moving field. UBA have been involved in research and development in this field for 5-6 years at this point in time, and they are at the very pinnacle of their research and development. First of all, this is an intercropped plantation, and this is absolutely vital. These returns are not from Jatropha alone. They are from Jatropha and Macauba. That is the first thing to consider. Number two, there have been very significant both genetic and strain improvements in terms of Jatropha. One of the areas that UBA have been very, very detailed in their investigation of is the performance of different strains of Jatropha in different locations. And what they have found is that different strains perform very, very well or very badly in different locations. And this hotspot has been identified as having ideal growing conditions, and the particular strain that grows very well here has been identified as well. So that's why they're achieving higher yields. The next thing about this plantation is that this is an intensively managed plantation. This is not marginal Jatropha farming. Marginal Jatropha farming on marginal land gives marginal returns. This is an intensively managed plantation with drip irrigation and also with intensive fertilization. The next thing that gives these large yields is improved agronomy practices. And these improvements are not just limited to biofuels alone. For instance, over the last 40 years, wheat production in the USA has grown by over 400%. And it's grown, and that's without doing drip irrigation and things like that. But wheat production has improved by over 400% in the last 40 years. And the reason it's improved by over 400% is research and development. And much of that improvement happens very quickly at the start, and then the improvements are sort of marginal thereafter. So there are a number of factors that combine together. And of course, remember as well, this is a hotspot. Much of the land in the southern zone in Costa Rica is some of the best agricultural land in Costa Rica. And even marginal land in Costa Rica performs better than marginal land elsewhere in the world. So are the returns high? Yes, they are high. Why are they high? A number of reasons, and I've identified a whole series of them there, and it's the combination of all those factors. But the primary reason that they're high is the fact that this is an intercropped model. This is Jatropha and Maca-uba, not just Jatropha alone. The next question, actually, I've touched on, I believe already. Have we done any field trials on this particular yam? Yes. This is identified as a hotspot, an ideal area for growing Jatropha. UBA have another Jatropha plantation growing right beside it, very close by. Yields and the question mentions that yields vary dramatically based on soil conditions and climate, and that is absolutely true. A vital point, and thank you for bringing that up, because yields do vary dramatically, very dramatically. Even, with 10 miles between two plantations, you can have a plantation growing one strain and producing well, and that same strain can be growing 10 miles down the road and producing very badly. So it is absolutely vital that you identify what UBA have identified as a hotspot, and this is a hotspot both in terms of Jatropha and Maca-uba growth and biofuel production, but also it's a hotspot in terms of a good area to see significant capital appreciation. Okay. The next question that we have is, what are the additional costs? And again, an excellent question. There are some additional costs. There are closing costs associated with this investment, and that's 3.2% of the purchase price, and $500 in legal fees. Going forward, the additional costs in terms of management of the plantation is that UBA take 10% of the biofuel yield. So they are as engaged in getting good returns as you are. There is a homeowners association. There's no charge for the homeowners association in year one, but from year two onwards, it's $25 per 5,000 square meter lot per month, which is $300 per year. The homeowners association will look after the security and maintenance of the common areas and all the stuff that a homeowners association would normally do. Okay, the next question we've got. Okay. Costa Rican land zoned for residential has a good history of appreciation. This isn't residential land, though. How do you justify the land value appreciation figures that you've stated? Okay, thank you for that question. And again, an excellent question. It is, in fact, residential land. So this is an agricultural subdivision, but it's an agricultural subdivision for residential purposes, which is the 5,000 square meters. This is why we're putting in the roads, the water, and the electricity to each of these lots. UBA are contractually required to have those services in within 2 years, and you're absolutely right. If this was pure agricultural land, then it wouldn't have this type of value. But it's not pure agricultural land. This is residential land with biofuels growing on it. So that's how we justify it. That's why the justification is there. There is a homeowners association established to manage the property generally, and however, this is a medium to long-term property and investment play. If you were planning to build a house sooner rather than later, so if you said to me, I want to build my home on it next year, I would probably say to you that unless you plan to be alone and sort of relatively lonely there, this may be not the investment for you, because most of our investors do not plan to build in the near term here. This is a long-term or medium to long-term property or home play for them, in that they plan to build, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, not this year or next year. You could build if there's no nothing to preclude you from building this year or next year, except that you would have to bear in mind that you would probably be the only home there for a significant period of time. Okay. The next question is that prices double after infrastructure, provided you paid the right pre-infrastructure price. Absolutely. Of course. What measure puts 1.23 acres of land in that area of 35,000? Well, that's something relatively easily checked, and I would suggest that what you would do, I mean, my saying it is one thing, but this is something that you can easily check yourself. What we can do is that I will send out to everybody the Google coordinates of the renewable energy farm, so you can identify exactly where it is on the map. I can also provide you with a list of close by, if you like, developments. But again, I would strongly suggest that you actually look at close by developments yourself, because again, me just identifying them is one thing, and then you can simply compare the cost of 5,000 square meters of serviced residential land in these close by or relatively close by developments compared to the renewable energy farm opportunity, and then you can clearly see that these similarly sized lots with services are priced very significantly higher. You will find a whole range of prices, some of them running up to 150, even 200,000 the closer they get to the beach areas. So that's something that you can easily check yourself once I've provided you with that little bit of information as to the location, and I can send you that location detail, and then you can simply compare and check, and you'll see that 35,000 would represent a very good price, and that the cheapest lot of similar size that the absolute cheapest you're going to get in this area is 70,000. So 35 to 70. We're saying that once the infrastructure is in, then our price would move to what other lots are in the area. Okay. The next question that we have is, where can I find information about Makauba? Now, Makauba is I did mention earlier that you will struggle to find significant information on the internet about Makauba returns. Makauba palm is known locally in Costa Rica as coyote palm. It's actually the palm that produces the local delicacy palm hearts. So you will get information about Makauba on the internet in relation to coyote and palm hearts. You will struggle to get significant information other than it does produce biofuels, and it produces a significant amount of biofuels on the internet, because effectively this is proprietary information researched and developed by UBA over the past 5 years. And again, this is one of the areas that quite often when people are doing their due diligence, they struggle with a little bit, because much of the information, much of the R&D that has been done into biofuels is done by private companies, private enterprises. And private companies and private enterprises don't tend to share their information publicly without getting a return on it. Much information in other areas that you might find on the internet is that has been sponsored by government research and things like that, but there's not a lot of government research done into biofuel production, and we are happy to share that information on a one-to-one basis with people, and of course our investors have all that information at their disposal. The next question I've got is, how does Costa Rica Invest make money from this project? Well, quite simply, we are the sales and marketing arm for UBA and Day Group, amongst other projects, and so we work closely with them, and we simply receive a commission. That's how we make our invest on it. We hopefully get people who are interested in biofuels, if you like, ideal investors, and place them with an ideal product for them, and then it becomes a win-win-win all round. UBA managed to get more plants in the ground and get more biofuels being produced. The investor gets great investment, and we are rewarded with a commission. And we have a long-term relationship with United Biofuels of America. Okay. The next question is, after 10 years, is there a buyback program? Why is there a 10-year tenure? The 10-year tenure, as stated, is sort of slightly confusing. I think we've actually misphrased that a little bit. We've just said that all of our figures are based around a 10-year projection. It's just a 10-year projection. It's not a tenure. You own the land ad infinitum. It is freehold. You own it until you sell it. There isn't a 10-year buyback. There's mention here. I'm sorry. The next part of the question is, why is there a 10-year tenure? Is there a 10-year buyback program? There isn't a 10-year buyback program. You own the land. However, if you choose to opt out of the biofuel farming agreement, you need to give 90 days notice in writing to United Biofuels of America. It's as simple as that, 90 days notice. Then United Biofuels of America have a 14-day option to buy the land back off you at whatever price you choose. So in other words, if you said, okay, well, I'm planning to sell my land, but I don't want the United Biofuels of America to have some type of, if you like, hold over the biofuels aspect of it by having a contract in place. I want to sell this land freehold, so I want to cancel my contract with United Biofuels of America, and I plan to sell my land. When you say that you plan to sell your land, United Biofuels of America have a first option to buy that land off you at whatever price you state. So if they feel it's a good deal, they have 14 days in which to exercise that option. So that's good news for you because it gives you another exit. If they feel you're asking too high a price, of course they won't exit. They won't exercise that option, and it'll be driven by market forces. So I hope that has answered that question. Okay, I do think we've actually run a few minutes over on time here, and I do see one or two other little questions there. I'm just going to quickly get to these, and we will contact everybody. When can I build on the land? Well, the land is yours. It's an agricultural subdivision, but a residential agricultural subdivision. You can build effectively, well, immediately, yes, but not quite immediately, because of course you've got to design your house and send your designs into the local planning authorities, and then they'll rubber stamp them, and then you can start to build. Of course, the roads and infrastructure, the electricity should be in before you start to build. You could, of course, put it in yourself. UBA are contractually obliged to have that in within 2 years. They're contractually obliged to have that in within 2 years. But you could build sooner rather than later if you wished. As I mentioned, this is really a medium to long-term play. So if you were considering building very, very soon, you would need to be comfortable with the fact that you would be one of the few or maybe the only house there for a while, quite a while. So I need to make that clear. Okay. Okay, do I need to, this again relates, it's an extension of that question, do I need to remove the biofuels to build my home? Well, the choice is yours. Again, you own the land, you own the Makauba, you own the Jatropha. If you chose to, you can cut it all down and landscape the area and build your home in the middle. Alternately, you could clear a small area of it and build your home there. On that small area, you can build, and then of course you've got this effectively beautiful tropical orchard growing around you and producing money all the time. Okay, The next question is, how big a house can I build? Okay, these are agricultural or agricultural subdivisions, and there are limitations as to what you can build. You can build 15% of the surface area of the lot over 2 floors. So 15% on the bottom floor and 15% on the top floor. You can only build one house on each lot. You can't build multiple houses. But to put that in perspective, these are 5,000 square meter lots, and a 5,000 square meter lot, 15% of that is 750 square meters. 750 square meters on the ground floor, 750 square meters on the first floor is 1,500 square meters. And 1,500 square meters is actually about 16,000 square feet. It's actually slightly over 16,000 square feet. So that would be a huge house. So for most people, 16,000 square feet is plenty big enough a house. There's no minimum, of course. You can build a much smaller house if you wish, and most people would opt, I think, for a smaller house. Okay. Okay. The next question is, how far is the land from the airport? It's about 40 minutes drive from the airport. About 40 minutes drive from the airport. The nearest major city, well, Buenos Aires is the capital of the canton or the capital of the county. Buenos Aires, I mean, I'm not sure where the questioner is from. It's a city in Costa Rican terms, but it's a big town. It's not really a large city. Of course, as you move towards the coastal area is much more developed, and there are lots of more touristy type towns in that area. There are a number of eco hotels actually very close to this is such a beautiful area that there's a number of eco hotels within 20 minutes drive of the renewable energy farm. You would be about an hour's drive, or maybe 45 minutes drive to the coast and to the first of the coastal hotels, and then the coastal hotels run all up and down the area. The nearest nice beach, again, well, there's that whole coast is covered in nice beaches. About 45 minutes. It depends on which beach you're getting to, I suppose. About 45 minutes, and there really are a whole range of beaches there. And then, of course, if you want to, you can drive out onto Osa and the Osa Peninsula and Corcovado National Park. So there are a lot of facilities in the area. Very beautiful area. The southern zone in Costa Rica is a very, very beautiful area. Although it has not seen the development of the rest of Costa Rica because it's relatively inaccessible. It has been, previously to drive to the southern zone was from the national airport was a 6 or a 7 hour drive. Now things have already improved because the coastal highway has already been extended and improved, and that has dramatically reduced the time. As the road and infrastructure improvements continue into this area is going to become more and more accessible. And then, of course, once the international airport opens up, that really is going to dramatically improve access to this area. And then on top of that, you've got this gigantic dam taking place, and it's just a requirement just to physically get the equipment and machinery and trucks there. That infrastructure has to be improved. So that's happening all the time as well. And then, of course, once the dam is completed, it's going to create a very large lake. And that in itself may become a significant tourist attraction. It remains to be seen. I mean, Arenal Lake is a very significant tourist attraction, although it has to be said that Arenal Lake is also right beside Arenal Volcano, and Arenal Volcano is a tourist attraction. So there are two aspects of things going on there. Okay, I think we'll wind it up on the last question, which is, are Costa Rican women beautiful? Well, I think Costa Rica, my opinion is that they're very beautiful, but I perhaps oughtn't give too much further information on that because I might be accused of I don't know, chauvinism, or my words might indict me. And one final question. High-speed internet access is very important for me. What options are available? Okay, now in the southern zone, there is a wireless internet access, not wireless. What do you call it? The Wi-Fi connection is available in this area. Um, uh, Internet access in the southern zone is not as good as in other areas of Costa Rica right now. It is not. And even cell phone coverage can be patchy. In the renewable energy farm, cell phone coverage is good, but in areas around it, it can be patchy, and there's no point in saying it's not. Now, it is improving, and it is in line with the government's commitment to improve roads, access, infrastructure, all of these things in this area. So it is improving vastly. Of course, when it comes to internet access in Costa Rica, the best internet access of all, of course, is down the phone lines, and they do have high-speed internet access available. There is 3G extensively available in other areas of Costa Rica, and it is extending down into the southern zone. And with the extension of that 3G internet access into the southern zone, that should significantly improve internet access in that area. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think we better wind it up there. We have run over on time. I will send out to everybody I did mention that I would send out the location, the Google coordinates of the renewable energy farm in the southern zone, because one of the questions that came up there, and I think it's a very important one, how do you know that what you're getting is good value, basically? How do we justify the prices? And I think it's very important that people do their own due diligence on this. And it's relative. Once you see where it is, then you can simply find other developments in the area and have a look at the prices yourself. I think when you have a look at those prices, you'll say, okay, right, as a development opportunity, this is very good value. As a development opportunity with biofuels growing on it, it is fantastic value. And so thank you very much, everybody, for attending. If you're seriously interested in this project, just to remind you, a quick email sent to info@costaricainvest.ie. Please include your name, a phone number you can be contacted on. If you would also include which country you're located in as well, that would be helpful, and the number of lots that you may be interested in. We'll then get your local sales consultant to get in contact with you and really have a chat and understand what you're looking for. And they'll get you the information that you need and discuss it through with you to see if this is the opportunity for you, if it's a suitable investment for you. And we look forward to welcoming you on board as a client. And again, thank you very much, everybody, for attending. Thank you, and good evening.